الآخرين. والحمد لله قاصم الجبارين، مبير الظالمين، مدرك الهاربين، نكال الظالمين، صريخ المستصرخين، موضع حاجات الطالبين، معتمد المؤمنين. الحمد لله الذي من خشيته ترعد السماء وسكانها، وترجف الأرض وعمارها، وتموج البحار ومن يسبح في غمراتها. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. الحمد لله الذي يخلق ولم يخلق، ويرزق ولا يرزق، ويطعم ولا يطعم، ويميت الأحياء ويحيي الموتى، وهو حي لا يموت، بيده الخير وهو على كل شيء قدير. اللهم صل على محمد عبدك ورسولك وأمينك وصفيك وحبيبك وخيرتك من خلقك، وحافظ سرك ومبلغ رسالاتك، أفضل وأحسن وأجمل وأكمل وأزكى وأنمى وأطيب وأطهر وأسنى وأكثر ما صليت وباركت وترحمت وتحننت وسلمت على أحد من عبادك وأنبيائك ورسلك وصفوتك وأهل الكرامة عليك من خلقك. اللهم وصل على علي أمير المؤمنين ووصي رسول رب العالمين، عبدك ووليك وأخي رسولك وحجتك على خلقك وآيتك الكبرى والنبأ العظيم. وصل على الصديقة الطاهرة فاطمة سيدة نساء العالمين. وصل على سبطي الرحمة وإمامي الهدى الحسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة. وصل على أئمة المسلمين علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والخلف الهادي المهدي. حججك على عبادك وأمنائك في بلادك صلاة كثيرة دائمة. اللهم وصل على ولي أمرك القائم المؤمل والعدل المنتظر، وحفه بملائكتك المقربين، وأيده بروح القدس يا رب العالمين. اللهم اجعله الداعي إلى كتابك والقائم بدينك، استخلفه في الأرض كما استخلفت الذين من قبله، مكن له دينه الذي ارتضيته له، أبدله من بعد خوفه أمنا يعبدك لا يشرك بك شيئا. اللهم أعزه واعزز به، وانصره وانتصر به، وانصره نصرا عزيزا، وافتح له فتحا يسيرا، واجعل له من لدنك سلطانا نصيرا. اللهم اظهر به دينك وسنة نبيك حتى لا يستخفي بشيء من الحق مخافة أحد من الخلق. اللهم إنا نرغب إليك في دولة كريمة تعز بها الإسلام وأهله، وتذل بها النفاق وأهله، وتجعلنا فيها من الدعاة إلى طاعتك والقادة إلى سبيلك، وترزقنا بها كرامة الدنيا والآخرة. اللهم ما عرفتنا من الحق فحملناه، وما قصرنا عنه فبلغناه. اللهم المم به شعثنا، واشعب به صدعنا، وارتق به فتقنا، وكثر به قلتنا، واعزز به ذلتنا، واغن به عن عائلنا، واقض به عن مغرمنا، واجبر به فقرنا، وسد به خلتنا، ويسر به عسرنا، وبيض به وجوهنا، وفك به أسرنا، وانجح به طلبتنا، وأنجز به مواعيدنا، واستجب به دعوتنا، واعطنا به سؤلنا، وبلغ به من الدنيا والآخرة آمالنا، واعطنا به فوق رغبتنا يا خير المسؤولين وأوسع المعطين. اشف به صدورنا وأذهب به غيظ قلوبنا، واهدنا به لما اختلف فيه من الحق بإذنك، إنك تهدي من تشاء إلى صراط مستقيم. وانصرنا به على عدوك وعدونا إله الحق، آمين. اللهم إنا نشكو إليك فقد نبينا صلواتك عليه وآله، وغيبة ولينا، وكثرة عدونا، وقلة عددنا، وشدة الفتن بنا، وتظاهر الزمان علينا. فصل على محمد وآله، وأعنا على ذلك بفتح منك تعجله، وبضر تكشفه، ونصر تعزه، وسلطان حق تظهره، ورحمة منك تجللناها، وعافية منك تلبسناها، برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم برحمتك في الصالحين فأدخلنا، وفي عليين فارفعنا، وبكأس من معين من عين سلسبيل فأسقنا، ومن الحور العين برحمتك فزوجنا، ومن الولدان المخلدين كأنهم لؤلؤ مكنون فأخدمنا، ومن ثمار الجنة ولحوم الطير فأطعمنا، ومن ثياب السندس والحرير والاستبرق فألبسنا، وليلة القدر وحج بيتك الحرام وقتلا في سبيلك فوفق لنا، وصالح الدعاء والمسألة فاستجب لنا. وإذا جمعت الأولين والآخرين يوم القيامة فارحمنا، وبراءة من النار فاكتب لنا، وفي جهنم فلا تغلنا، وفي عذابك وهوانك فلا تبتلنا، ومن الزقوم والضريع فلا تطعمنا، ومع الشياطين فلا تجعلنا، وفي النار على وجوهنا فلا تكببنا، ومن ثياب النار وسرابيل القطران فلا تلبسنا، ومن كل سوء يا لا إله إلا أنت بحق لا إله إلا أنت فنجنا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. اللهم صل على محمد وآله.
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Okay, so yesterday we left off over here. We're saying, we asked the question, how many different ways can you find out that there's a fire somewhere? So we broke it down in two ways. One is, we'll start off if you're in a separate room or it's in somewhere else that you're not near. And then after we go through that, then we can try to answer what if you actually can go there and can go to that room. So, okay, let's start off with you. Yeah. Sound, okay.
Heat and gas.
So sound, heat, and gas. Ugh, I don't know why I keep using this one. Okay, good. What else?
It smells bad.
Oh yeah, that's smell over here. Okay.
You start like seeing like smoke build around.
You see smoke, good. Okay. What else?
I was gonna say heat, but someone already said that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Paid attention.
You can hear like something like burning.
Hear something burning?
Yeah, or like
Sound,
crackling.
yeah.
Something.
Yeah. See the flame, okay. So, yeah, we can say see the flame. Actually see the fire itself, okay. Hasan, what else?
A fire alarm.
That's good. I guess that's different than sound, right? So sound of either the fire itself, like the crackling, or an alarm. Okay, that's good.
If you see like firefighters.
Yeah, that's another good one, yeah.
That coming into the building.
Maybe like hearing other people like talking or like screaming about like the fire in the room.
Okay, so basically you get the information from other people, right?
Yeah.
Whether they scream or somebody might just come in the room like fire, like scream fire, right? Something like that. Okay. Yeah.
Smell.
Smell? Yeah, right there. Anything else? You only had smell? Okay, I think this is a pretty good list. Okay. Yeah, I think you guys pretty much got everything. Okay. Now, if you were going to, because look, all of these are ways of finding out that there's a fire. Now, if you're going to assign, let's say, a value, which one of these would be, like it's a clue, but it doesn't definitely 100% tell you that there's a fire. Like if there's a, I don't know, one of these things might be like, okay, like there's a 30% chance there's a fire. But some of these other things on here might be like, no, if I see this or this happens, it's 90% or even 100%. Yeah. So you just pick one and give me like a percentage value of how likely is that going to show you that there's a fire.
Maybe like see smoke. If you see smoke, and if it's not like heavy smoke, it could be someone cooking something.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so what number do you think you would give that? Like, give me a percentage. You see smoke. What's the likelihood that that's like an actual fire, or could be something else? What do you think?
25 to maybe 30%.
All right, that's not a bad value. 25 to 30%. Okay. All right, somebody else pick, or you want to go with that one, or you want to pick something else?
I'm gonna pick something else.
All right, go
so maybe like the other people part, because
Okay.
I mean, if like one or like two people tell you, then you'll have doubts. But then if more and more like people come, people come together and say and be like, oh, there's a fire, then it just depends on the number of people that tell you, and then if you
That's
like
good.
trust them or not.
So that'll increase your percentage, right?
Yeah.
So if, and the other factor too would be depends on what kind of people too, right?
Yeah.
So if one random person walks in right now and says fire, yeah, they come in and say fire, oh, like, okay, maybe not. But if somebody else that we all know here, they come in and say it, then we'll probably trust them more than some other random person, right? Yeah. And yeah, if like 15 people come in and say it, or one after the other they come and say it, that's going to increase the percentage. Yeah, that's true. So like maybe one person, even somebody that, let's say you know that, sometimes they pull pranks and they joke around a lot. That's going to reduce the percentage too, right? So even knowing about that person, even if you know them, you know a little bit about their background, like, yeah, this person messes around all the time, maybe you're like, they're crying wolf, right? It's possible. Yeah, okay.
The firefighters one.
Okay,
It might be for something other than a fire.
good. Yeah, that's true. Okay, so what percentage do you think would give that?
Like maybe like 70%.
70%, yeah. Sounds like a good number. Okay. What about seeing the fire?
I have a question for someone else.
You have a question for someone else? Okay. I'll allow it.
Like
Well,
for
depends on the
anyone.
question, depends on for who.
It's for anyone.
For anyone, okay.
How does the fire begin?
Oh boy, you're getting too philosophical. We're getting there, don't worry, we're getting there. These kids are ahead of this.
Someone uses a match and puts it. Like they started a fire in their chimney and it got too powerful because they added too much fire.
Yeah, it's possible. There's so many different possibilities, right? So right now, all we know, or we're sitting here in a room, and any of these things happen, and we're just trying to figure out, okay, is there actually a fire or not, right? And that's why we're assigning all these like percentages. All right, anybody else want to pick one? Right, over here, we don't have this. So if you actually, let's say you go and see the fire yourself now. You go, you walk across and actually see it. What percentage of a chance does that actually mean there's a fire or not? If somebody else, you can pass it on.
I think that'd be pretty obvious, 100%. If you can
If you
see
see
the
it,
fire. Yeah, if you see the
100%?
fire, then you know there's a fire.
Okay. Anybody? Everybody, raise your hand if you agree with him. Oh, sorry, what's your name? Ahmed. Okay. If you agree with Ahmed, raise your hand. If you disagree, raise your hand. I don't think it's 100%. I don't think it's 100%. So let me rephrase it and maybe you'll think about it. So you see a fire. Is it 100% guaranteed that when you see a fire, it's definitely a real fire that you're looking at? 100%?
It might be like eight, like 60 to 80% because it might be like on some TV, and
Okay.
then the sound it's also the same because you could also just be hearing something.
So we're talking about seeing, the other ones we'll go through, but right now we're talking about you actually go and you're seeing a fire. You're seeing flames.
So like 60 to 80% is actually about.
So what are some other possibilities? So you said TV. Maybe. I mean, it has to be like a really, really high def, like QLED, like 8,000, 8K or whatever. Or 100. Or maybe like it's a hologram or something like that, right? Because now hologram technology is finally coming out. Or what else? You could be dreaming, right? Right? Something like that. Yeah.
Or your parents are doing some barbecue.
Yeah, they could be barbecue. That one, what you're talking about is probably if you're talking about this one, or maybe even this one, depending on if your parents know how to barbecue or
they
not.
forget to turn the heat down after they're cooking.
Yeah, maybe. All right, can you pass it back to Hadi?
It could be hallucinations.
Yeah, could be hallucinations too, right? So it might seem like 100%, but now there's like a small chance maybe it's not. So I don't know. You think maybe 95% is fair? Probably a good number. Most likely if you see it fair. It's fair? Thank you. Okay. What about all of these things? Whether you hear like crackling sound, you hear an alarm, you feel heat, you smell gas or something like that. What number would you give to that? Is it on or off? Sorry. Yeah, you can just keep them on.
Maybe it's like 70% because you might just be smelling like some barbecue
Yeah, like he said, good.
or like
Okay.
cooking from inside.
Can you pass it to him? Yeah, go ahead.
And the smell of something fries.
French fries? Yeah, maybe somebody's burning some French fries. It's possible too. Yeah.
burning some fries.
That's true. Yeah. Okay.
I think
Yeah.
like maybe 40 to 50%, like would also apply to like a sound and heat and gas and smell, because sound, like sometimes people sound like fire alarms. They usually go off when they when it senses like any type of smoke. So like you won't be exactly sure if it's actually like just smoke from someone like cooking or it's an actual fire. And then that might like start building up, so it's like kind of like over time because it's not like it's gonna start getting very hot right away.
Yeah.
And then gas, there might be like gas leak smells, but then that's also a probability, and it also applies to smell.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
you can't
Okay.
be sure right away.
Yeah, so far we have no surefire way. So now the question is there any 100% absolutely certain way that you know that there is a fire in front of you?
If you touch it.
Is that what you're going to say too? Yeah. So, you get
And-
burnt, right?
Yeah.
You get burnt. That's not a hologram. That's not a figment of your imagination. You got burnt, right? Okay.
And so the sound, it might be from like a TV
Yeah,
crackling.
that's true, right? Or it can come from somebody's
And
phone.
the heat, it might be from the temperature of the AC.
Yep.
And yeah, the gas was the barbecue at the end.
Okay. So now we got that. Now we're going to change it up a little bit and replace fire with God, with Allah. Now the same thing we're going to apply here, right? There are different ways that you can find out and that we've been taught that God is real and Islam is true, things like that, right? Normally, what's the way that most of us believe in Islam and we've been taught that God exists? Which way out of all these? I mean, obviously we're not talking about like sound and heat. It's not like we're hearing God, but you know what I mean. Which one of these methods? Yeah. Can you pass the mic?
Like see, like the Quran, like read it, or like, you know, those miracles, I guess.
So, did you see the miracles yourself?
Well, I mean, depends. I mean, maybe, I don't know.
So did you see like the Prophet come down and do all this stuff?
Well, no, maybe it's like, I don't know, win $10,000.
So these miracles, that we've all learned about them, right? So where are we getting the information from?
The Quran, right? Or
Okay, so we got it from the Quran. So did you read about the miracles yourself and you believe in it because of that? Or did you get it from somewhere else? Meaning, did you see the Prophet come down and recite the Quran to you? Like you were living 1400 years ago, he told it to you?
no, it's from other people.
Okay. All right. What else? So far we got other people. Yeah? Go ahead. No? Other people, yeah. So it's another one. And who are normally the other people that we're learning all this stuff from? Our parents, right? So, our parents. They're the ones who are, running into our room when we're younger and saying, Allah is one. There are 14 ma'asumin, 124,000 prophets. This is the rules for Islam. Tell us about the Ahlul Bayt, tell us about the Quran, all these mu'jizat. They're the ones who tell us about everything. And just like over here, it's going to depend on the number of people, how much we trust them. So obviously, when we're kids, we don't expect our parents to lie about stuff like that. But whenever they're telling us stuff, we expect it to be true. So it has a lot of value to it. And that's how every single person, every single human, whatever they believe, they're getting it from their parents, right? And the amount of information that we're getting too is going to vary. So whatever they understand about God, that's what they're going to come and give us. So we've been talking a little bit about this over the past few nights where we said that, we were talking about the analogy of Superman, right? So he's raised by his earthling human parents, right? Jonathan and Martha Kent. That's Clark Kent's parents, right? You don't know their names, though. Clark Kent is raised by Jonathan and Martha Kent from Smallville, Kansas, right? Yeah? I know Superman stuff more than you guys, I suppose, right? But he's raised by these earthlings, right? These humans. So we were saying that the reason he doesn't know how to be Superman is because these two earthlings are raising him, so how's he going to know? But at the same time, if he wasn't raised by these two parents, he wouldn't actually have all these good characteristics that he needed in order to become Superman later on. And in the comics, that's what they show, that the reason that his Kryptonian parents sent him down to Earth is specifically because they said humans are good, they have a lot of hope in them, they have a good, kind heart. If they raise our son, they'll raise him with the right qualities. And that'll be enough for him so that eventually he can be like this hope for mankind. So that's the same thing for us too. Our parents, they get, they don't have obviously this full information about Allah. They have whatever they were taught, they have done their best to try to give us that information too, right? So yeah, maybe they didn't give us every single thing that we need in this society because, they're going by whatever they know. But the idea is they've given us a good foundation so that we can grow if we actually want to, right? So they've done as much as they can based on what they've learned. So we have to, kind of understand and respect that. I remember, when I was younger, when I finally became a little bit more religious, like in college and stuff, I had a few years in my life where I was just like upset, just angry with my parents all the time. I'm like, if you had taught me these things when I was younger, then, I wouldn't have messed around when I was a kid, and I would have done this better and this better. And I was being immature. And then, again, after a while, I thought about it. I said, look, they didn't know any better. How are they going to teach me stuff that they didn't know? They have no idea about, let's say, U.S. history or the deep philosophies of like capitalism and consumerism and what's going on, in terms of democracy in this country. They didn't know all the negative things that were surrounding this country, so how could they have prepared us? Like, they had no idea. Whatever they learned about Allah and the Ahlul Bayt and Islam and all this, they tried their best to teach us when we were younger, and it's our job to kind of build off that. So they give us a good foundation, and we have to kind of build off that foundation. That make sense? Yeah? Okay, please recite as-salawat. So our parents are basically this kind of chain or this line, right? So our parents, they're getting it from our grandparents, right? And that's going on and on and on. And obviously, we're supposed to be getting all this stuff from, the ulama, and they got it from the Ahlul Bayt, alayhimus salam. And the idea is, all of that stuff is sourced from Allah. So we're supposed to be following this chain of, that it's supposed to be a very strong chain. That's why it has a lot of value. All these people, right, it's increasing the percentage. Everybody's been passing down the same information. But at the end of the day, maybe it's not giving us 100% certainty. Like we said over here, maybe it'll give you 100%, maybe not. You could have a lot of people, maybe 100 people run into this building and say, oh, there's a fire. And maybe they're telling the truth, maybe they're not. Or maybe they're mistaken, maybe they're not. Maybe they were hallucinating, right? So there's still like a little bit of doubt there, but it's the major way that most people find out about what is real, what's not real. Okay. So over here, even in Islamic sciences, we talk about this. When we get information for other people, when it's passed down, in Islamic sciences, these are called the naqliyat. Naqliyat just means the transmitted information, right? So examples of that, as you guys mentioned, right? The Quran, we weren't there. It's been transmitted down to all of us, right? That same Quran that was sent down and recited there, we have the same thing in our hands right now. So anybody who wants to see if Islam is the truth and the Quran is a miracle and mu'jiza, that mu'jiza is still here. You can open it up and you can read. Now, you have to have some background information in the history and Arabic grammar and things like that, but you can still open it up right now. But for the same thing, for the, let's say, miracles of Nabi Musa alayhi salam, of Nabi Isa alayhi salam, there's no way for us to really to find that out because their miracles happened then and they stopped. But they say the only miracle that's living and continuous is the Quran. That's the only thing we still have in our hands. And the only claim that we have as Muslims to say, yes, we have a living miracle and no one else has that. We're the only ones who have something still available like that. So we have Quran, and obviously the other one is the Hadith, right? Or all of these narrations. So these things too, all the life history of the Ahlul Bayt, all of their teachings, all of the rulings, how we build our aqidah and aqaid, philosophy, all that stuff we're getting, right? So we have the Thaqalain, right? So we have the Quran, and then we have all the narrations about the Ahlul Bayt. So all of this stuff is transmitted. But now let me ask you a question. Let's say one day you're looking in a hadith book, because you're bored and for some reason you decided to open it up. And over there, let's say it says some imam said that 1 + 1 = 3. Yeah, let's just pretend you found a hadith and the imam said, the imam says 1 + 1 = 3. What would you do with a hadith like that? Where did my other water bottle go? Wow. There's still water there. Surah Al-Mu'min.
How can you be sure that it's an actual hadith?
So what would make you doubt it?
Because of how it's not correct and it never was in official mathematics.
Uh-huh. So you're saying mathematics can be more important than the hadith?
No, I'm saying that the hadith might not be a true one. What if somebody just said it and said that they were the imam?
Okay, good. Yeah.
If there's a reason, like for instance, you know how if you do math, you say 1 + 1 is like 2. There's a reason why, like put one finger with another finger, it's 2 fingers. If they just say 1 + 1 is 3, and you say like that, where's a proof? Where's like your reasoning? Like what makes it 3 and not 2?
Hasan. So for a lot of us, when we're taught about God, taught about Islam, all of these things, yeah, we get all this information from our parents. It's all been passed down. But sometimes, for everybody, it varies. Some of us, that's good enough. We have iman from that, and we're good to go. For some of us, because everybody else around us is saying something different, right? We're talking about we're the abnormal people in society right now. Everybody else around us, or most of the people right now, they're atheists and secularists and all these other things. So they're all pretty much saying God doesn't exist. That God's not real. Don't believe in this, fake, these fairy tales and stuff like that. So they're all running around, and they're making a claim like 1 + 1 = 3, and we're trying to figure out, okay, well, what is true or not? So if we're just saying, look, we got this idea about God just from the Quran and the Hadith, they might say, well, we don't believe in that stuff. You have to give us another way. You have to prove to us, just like you said, one finger. I mean, that's 2. You don't need a Hadith to tell you that. You don't need the Quran to tell you that. So when we're talking about believing in God, we have to think of another way that we can get more of that 100% certainty, or even higher, maybe even 95%. So what are some other ways that we can understand and believe in God that everybody else can use as well? Because if they can't use the Quran and Hadith, then what else can we rely on to know that God exists without a doubt?
How much sense it makes.
Mm-hmm. How do you prove that?
Like, now in atheism they think that the world created itself, but you can't, the boat doesn't make itself, a plate doesn't make itself, nothing makes itself.
Right. So the way that we understand the world, we've never seen anything spontaneously just create itself, right? We always say something can't come from nothing. Something always comes from something. So it's a rational idea, right? It's a logical idea. So when somebody else says something otherwise, it makes it sound like they're saying 1 + 1 = 3. We say, okay, so that's giving us, what percentage value would you give that sort of idea? Would you say that gives you 100% proof that God exists? Would you say 90%? What would you say? The idea that something must come from something. It can't come from nothing. 95. So it's almost as if you're seeing the fire, right? Something like that, right? Yeah, Hadi.
I would argue against him because, like, if an atheist would have heard that, they might have believed it like 70%. Because how was God? Like, what is God? How did God come to exist? So, like, how the earth was created by God. What is God? How did he come to create earth? Like, how did this whole thing start?
So you're saying this idea of something coming from nothing, or something and must come from something, they'll respond to that by saying, well, okay, but that gives us all these other questions. Where did God come from, and what's his nature, and stuff like that. So maybe that wouldn't give them this sort of 95% certainty. That's what you're saying? Is there a way that you can think of where you can give them 100% certainty? No?
No.
So now, this is where we want to throw in the other idea, if I have room. Okay. So atheists will usually, we'll obviously talk about science, right? Right. This is where we want to start to bring in the other idea now. Most atheists, I think just about everyone, will accept the idea of science, right? That's their whole idea too, is they're like, science is not showing that God exists, so they're going with science. Like, okay, fine. So let's first take a pause there. What is science? Yeah. One second. Let me pass the mic to you. One second. Yeah, go ahead. You forgot the word? You forgot the word in English? You know it in Arabic? You know it in Spanish? Okay, pass it to somebody else then. And when you remember, you can take the mic back. Yeah, we'll get there, inshallah. Yeah. Yeah, so. That's okay. When you remember, then we get the mic back to you, okay? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think like science is just like the, you know, kind of like making like sense of what the world around us is, like how nature works and how all of that, like, you know, how the processes work. Maybe like, I don't know, like in a cell, like how that works, or like whatever you want to, like, you know, look at, like how an insect works or something like that. So just being able to, like, you figure out like how nature works around you.
So how the world or how nature works. Okay? So how do they do that? How do they figure out how the world and nature works? Let's ask a scientist.
I mean, you asked the question, what science is, and I think science is a group of rules which we don't know necessarily where they came from. I mean, we conclude what the rules are by observations. It's our observations.
So the how is through observations, right? So the observations usually we're using are, it's coming from the five senses. Yeah? Anybody else want to add anything? Yeah, go ahead, Amir. Amir, right? To make sure I remember everybody's names too. Yeah, go ahead.
It's kind of like science, kind of like so it's basically the whole world, but then they will classifying things and then like putting things into like steps and procedures, like how a plant grows or something like that. It's like it's like observing the world and then putting them into like steps and procedures to find out where how they started off, and then how it's like got to where it is right now, and then how it can evolve in the future.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good description too. Anybody else? Yeah.
It's like the study of like the material universe. So like, you know, the universe, but like on a material level, like humans,
very
atoms.
important thing to add on. Yeah.
Not like spiritual and stuff.
Okay. Yeah, I have to add that too. Material, not immaterial. Spiritual. Yeah.
How something does something else.
How something does something. Yeah. So going back to this now, right? We're saying, how do you determine all this stuff, right? How are you looking at the material world? The only way you can figure out what's going on in the material world is by using material means, right? Observations, your five senses. So, for example, let's say we were doing a scientific experiment over here, right? And we noticed that whenever somebody walks through the door, the first thing they do is, they grab a date. Okay, let's do it without. So they come in and they shake hands. And we start observing, sorry? Oh, salam. Salam, shake hands. Yeah, we'll do that, okay. So they say salam and shake hands with whoever else is in here. Right? So we start noticing that. So you remember your thing from before? Okay, go ahead.
Who made God, and what is the person who made God not think what God was thinking?
We're going to get to that question, yeah. After we get through these questions, we're going to get to that eventually in one of these other nights, okay? Okay, Hasan. So yeah, we're watching, we're sitting here, we're observing, we're all the scientists. So we see that, okay, one person comes in, he says, Salaam alaikum, shakes the hand, whoever else is here. We see somebody else do that. Over and over again, we see all these people coming in saying salam and shaking hands. Now what a scientist, they're observing this, so their conclusion is that any time somebody comes in, they say salam and shake their hands. And they're going to keep predicting that that's what's going to happen too. But does that give them 100% certainty that that's how everybody's going to be? No. And that's the idea, right? We're talking about using the five senses in observation. When we were talking about knowing about a fire, what was sort of the equivalent in terms of knowing about the fire, right? It was the idea of you hear it, it's sound, or the alarm, or you smell gas, or even, you see the fire, all those things. We said that all of those things won't lead you to 100%. Maybe at most it might get like 75%, but that'll never give you 100%. And that's one of the biggest mistakes that people make right now, is they think that science is there to tell you the truth. It doesn't tell you the truth. Number one, as he said, sorry, your name was, I forgot already. Yeah. Bakr. So Bakr said, it only talks about the material world. Meaning, when somebody says that, okay, what's your scientific proof for God? Like, hold on. We're saying that God is immaterial. God is not made of matter and stuff. So you scientists, you don't even have the right to ask that question, because you can't ever show it to us. It's like asking a scientist, show me that 1 + 1 = 2. The scientist is like, I can't show you that. That's not part of science. That's part of mathematics. That's a whole different discipline, right? You can't show 1 + 1 = 2. 1 + 1 is something that's a concept. It's in your mind. It's immaterial. It's abstract. The idea of God is the same thing. It's not something that you show in an experiment. So when a scientist, especially an atheist, is like, show me God exists. Like, no, we can't do that. Just like you can't show love exists, you can't show freedom exists. You can't show anything like that because they're non-material things. So you, as a scientist, you're out of your jurisdiction. You're asking the wrong question. You can stick to the material stuff, and that's fine. But even with the material stuff, you're only going to get 75%. You can keep experimenting over and over again, but will they ever be able to say without, with 100% certainty that their conclusions are true? No. And that's why you see scientists, as they say, it's constantly changing. It's constantly growing. Everything changes. For those who are, who know their, let's say, physics and things like that, there's been different models that they've discussed in physics. So for a while, there was the classical model, right? Classical, or it's like the Newtonian model of the world. Then after that, Einstein came, and he had general relativity, special relativity, so that changed it a little bit. And now they said both of those are wrong. Now we're dealing with quantum rules or quantum mechanics. And all of these three different things, all these different models of physics, all of them are different. People who believe in a quantum understanding of the world don't believe in a classical or Newtonian, I forgot the L there, or the Einsteinian understanding. So all these are different ways of looking at it. And then people now who are over here saying, look, we're not even sure if that's right. This is probably going to change too. Because they're observing, they're looking at mathematical equations, observing, they're trying to calculate stuff, but at the end of the day, it can always change. It's never going to be 100%. Everything they have is always going to be a theory. There's no fact. There's no truth in science. And so when people say science versus religion, for example, say the idea is religion is trying to give you the truth about everything. Let me change colors now. It's trying to tell you about the material world, and it's also telling you about the immaterial and spiritual world. Whereas science is only trying to tell you about material, but even there, it's only going to be 75%. So when people are trying to pit one against the other, say, look, it's a no contest. They're in two different categories altogether. Science is just basic stuff in this world, and that's it. And it can give you some hints and clues about what's happening here. But it'll never be 100%. Even, for example, right, for a long time, what temperature does water boil at? $100? For $100, I'll boil too, yeah.
100 degrees Celsius.
That's water boiling, 100 degrees Celsius? Celsius though, 100? Okay. So for a while, 100 degrees Celsius, they thought this is it. Water will always boil then. But then they said, you know what? Actually, we forgot something because they later experimented. They went to different elevations. They said, okay, at lower elevations, it doesn't boil that much. At higher elevations, it doesn't boil. So they said that this, what they thought was a fact, is not a 100% fact anymore. So they had to get rid of that and say, now it's that, but it also depends on the elevation too. So there isn't some hard and fast rule yet. But even then, now they can't say that, okay, definitely it'll be elevation and that'll affect things, because there could be some other variable that they don't know yet too. And that's what science is doing. It's constantly finding new variables and looking at different things. But it'll never, ever be 100%, because as far as they go and they observe, there's always going to be new things that you look at. If, even for an example, right now, we say that, I'm trying to give an example, right? And the animal world, right? Like, the example they typically give is like, okay, every swan that they thought for a while is always going to be white. Every single swan will be white. But the minute one non-white swan is born, whether it's black or gray or whatever, then their whole rule goes down. That's the thing. They always have to wait. They always have to examine and observe. It's always open for change. The idea that we have in religion is that it's trying to give you al-haq, the truth and reality. That stuff is not going to change. And it's telling you sometimes about what happens in the material world, but other times, mostly it's telling you about what happens to your soul, what happens to in these higher realms. And that's the idea. So you don't really say religion versus science, but let's just say science says one thing about the material world and religion says something else. Which one do you give priority to?
Religion, because it can't change, and science, so that science, it always changes, so that anything that science says, it might be 0% true, and that might not be true at all. But there's always religion doesn't change, so
Awesome.
it's always going to have the same chance. So it's always going to have a chance that it's true.
Hasan, perfect. Sorry, your name was?
Hasan.
Hasan. Okay, can you pass to Bakr, please?
Can you repeat the question again?
So, let's just say scientists right now, they make a certain claim, right? I'm trying to give any example. Okay, well, we're using it as an example. Maybe on another night we can discuss it. Let's just say scientists say we evolved from apes, monkeys, right? What people understand of Darwinian evolution, although that's debatable, whatever. Let's just stick with that for now. They say we evolved from monkeys and apes. And let's say, if we're assuming the normal story in the Quran and Hadith, that no, we came from Nabi Adam, we didn't come from apes or monkeys or things like that. Now, there's two competing ideas. Which one do we prefer?
I say religion because with the scientist stuff, it's like multiple people and multiple opinions. It's opinionated, not like some people have like, you know, not everyone's gonna be like honest with their like, you know, ideas and stuff. They're gonna say like, you know, well, I think it's gonna be this, even though any other idea is not gonna work. But with like, you know, religion, it's like one idea, one person. It's not like, you know, opinionated. It's like mostly like, you know, all truth and stuff.
Awesome. And the idea is that Allah sends down these prophets and messengers for a reason. That look, you humans, you got brains, that's good, right? You have an aql. But there's only so much you can figure out by yourself. For everything else, I'm sending down prophets so that they can explain things to you. Because you guys can't figure these things out. Stuff about your soul, you have no idea. What is right and wrong? Yeah, okay, you know that murdering is bad and lying is bad and stealing is bad. But how to run a society, you have no idea. How to perfect your soul, you don't have any idea. The deeper truths that we have, you won't know. So we're sending down all these prophets and messengers to teach you this. And then afterwards, for new things that come up, the Ahlul Bayt have continued, the Imams continued to explain that. And they gave us all these principles, which they taught to their ashab and their companions. And those teachings came down, and now we have ulama, maraji, who are trying their best to take those teachings and give it to us. So we have this chain back to Allah, right? The one and only source of truth. Whereas scientists, they're trying to observe and they're making good guesses and estimations, and it's helpful. We're not anti-science, but it's never going to give us that 100% certainty. So, Hasan. Okay, I want to end with this before we end for tonight. Okay. So we have different methods and ways of understanding what is true and what's real, right? So that's why I gave this analogy of looking at and seeing fire. So one way is that somebody else comes and tells you, right? So, okay, that might work out. And we said that that's like, in a sense, almost like the Quran or the Hadith or even history, right? Because these are all things that are written down that we're learning from other people, right? Then we have this idea of seeing smoke. Well, this is when somebody gives you, like a rational or like a logical answer. Like, I believe, who gave this answer? Hasan, I think you gave the answer, right? Before, when you're saying, look, we all know rationally, you can't, something that doesn't just pop into existence. It has to come from something else, right? That's a rational and logical answer. Just like when you see smoke, okay, more than likely it's probably going to be fire. Maybe not, but most likely it is, so that's how we run our lives. Then, besides that, we can see the fire. Like, okay, well that's a lot stronger. This is where you go a little bit higher, and this is where they start talking about the idea of philosophy. So philosophy is a stronger version of this. It's a specific science that relies on pure rational principles and ideas, right? I'll give you an example. Oh, okay. So in logic, for example, right? If A equals B, and if I say B equals C, then what can you conclude? A equals C, right? And this will be true for anything. So that's based on, like a higher sense of philosophy and logic. When you apply these rules, and then this is what our Islamic philosophers do as well. When they prove that God exists, they prove it with this sort of level of certainty. Like 95%, it's very, very hard to break. You would even say 99%. And then finally, what they say is possibly the strongest one is when you're actually burnt. When you actually feel the fire. And this is where some bring in the science of irfan, or spirituality. And they say that's what they're trying to do, is trying to get you to, in a sense, feel God or be burnt by Allah. So that when people who accept those ideas. Yeah, I think I'll leave it there for today. So over here, we might say science is kind of like, in between over here, right? Because a lot of the scientific ideas are just being grabbed from pure, past scientists, people just continuing on. Like the reason most people right now, they believe in Darwinian evolution is because other scientists do. The reason we're being taught in public school about that kind of evolution is because our teacher's telling us. So we're just kind of trusting them. It's in the textbook, that's it. And again, I'm not pro or anti yet. I'm just saying that that's how we normally learn. Or if you talk about the Big Bang Theory or anything like that, it's because it's being taught by other people. And they'll try to give you some arguments that it makes sense, but it might not be, 100%. So as you see, as you go down, the level of certainty increases. This is the only one that we'd say is 100%. We'll give you 100% certainty. This one might give you 95, maybe 99%. This one might give you, depending on how strong it is, it might give you up to 95%. This one, maybe like 75%. Most of our lives, we're over here. And that's why a lot of people end up having so many doubts about Islam. Because within us, we have the ability to, ask for more and want more. And that's good. But that doesn't mean we reject everything else too. So when Allah puts that curiosity in you, He's basically saying, okay, you heard about the fire from others. I want you now to go and see if you can see the smoke yourself. And if that's not enough, then go see the fire for yourself. And if that's not enough for you, then go and try to be burnt by the fire. And over here, because everybody around us is denying that there's any fire, meaning they're denying God, they're denying truth now, our job is to go as far as our aql, our intellect, our soul allows, and see how far we can go with that. Some of you might be okay over here. That's fine. Some of you might stop here. There's different levels for everybody. And as you go and see that, you'll see that religion and science are not really at odds, but there are going to be some times where religion will offer higher arguments that will kind of tell science that, look, what you guys are saying is not exactly true. You're observing the universe, like you're seeing people come into the room. You think that everybody comes in and says salam and shakes hands, but there's actually something more that you don't know, and religion can give you those other variables. Okay. Any questions or comments before we end tonight?
Here I remember the ayah بَلَا وَلَكِنْ لِيَطْمَئِنَّ قَلْبِي. It sounds like this is the 100% that Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam asked for. He wanted to see the birds coming to life. This is the certainty, the 100% certainty, I guess.
Ahsantum. Yeah, so in a lot of these ayat which talk about, قُلْ هَاتُوا بُرْهَانَكُمْ إِن كُنْتُمْ صَادِقِينَ, or, تَطْمَئِنُّ الْقُلُوبِ. So they talk about, okay, in the Quran, right? What is عَيْنُ الْيَقِينَ, حَقَّ الْيَقِينَ. There's all these terms that are used in the Quran. So ulama, the mufassirin say, okay, does it apply to these things or not? So there's a big debate. Some say, like especially mutakallimin, they have the opinion that no, every single Nabi and Rasul, they're always at this level. So that interpretation is something else. Other ulama say no, the Anbiya, they can be at any of these levels, usually over here, but Allah gives them a chance to even grow in their iman. Because nobody's perfect right at the beginning. So yes, as you're saying, maybe they have a chance to sort of grow in that sense too. So there's a discussion in the books of tafsir and tafasir about what that actually means. But I think the majority opinion is what you've said, is that there's a room for growth in terms of their itminan and their qalb. Okay. Okay, I think we will, no other questions or comments, so we'll end for today, inshallah. So we'll continue on this topic, I think for tomorrow night as well. And then our plan, because the nights of Qadr are coming up as well. And there'll be some a'mal being performed here. So what we're going to try to do for those nights of a'mal is, a lot of times when we perform them, it's just a bunch of Arabic stuff that's recited. I don't know how many of you know what's going on. Even if you have Arabic in your mind, when the stuff's recited, you actually know what it means. I don't know what it means. Even if you look at the translation, it sounds like Shakespearean stuff. Like it doesn't really, connect with you. So what we're going to try to do is on, the 3 different nights, 19th, 21st, and 23rd. Meaning, so I guess it's Wednesday night, Friday night, and Sunday night. We'll pick one piece of the a'mal, like one of the du'as, or maybe the idea of putting the Quran in your head, one of these things, and we'll talk about it a little bit, and we'll see if, we'll try to explain it. That way, when we go and perform the a'mal, maybe it'll have, a bit more of a meaning for us, inshallah. Okay, so we'll end for tonight. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ahl baytih tayyibin at-tahirin.